What's up, chat? What's up, YouTube? We're trying something a little bit different here. Normally on Sundays, you guys hear me talk about how like it's been an exciting weekend and we had a bunch of exciting RLCS matches. But because it's Sunday, we have to do a Q&A video. Well, it is technically Saturday and we're recording things ahead of time. But we're doing it live on Twitch. I've never done this before and we're experimenting a little bit with this. So let me know how you guys feel about it in the comments down below. Chat, if you want to just welcome them and say it's Sunday, it is Sunday, my dudes. Not Wednesday. But what's a little bit different is we're doing a live Q&A. I've never done it like this before. So the way that it's gonna work, because we're changing things up a little bit, is I'm gonna still use Q&A videos as a reference, go through YouTube comments, stuff like that, scroll through some that I like. But if you're in chat and you have questions you want answered in the Q&A video, something that's elaborated and given the time of day, let me know. Also, if you have your own opinions about some of the questions being answered, also let me know. So with that said, let's go over to the YouTube video and look at some of these comments. I usually take the top ones, the ones that are most upvoted, because that means other people also like it. So the first one that I'm going to do is owner of the white sedan, who's actually a regular on Twitch as well. I love his name because it always reminds me of the people who get yelled at for leaving their lights on in the parking lot. He says, hey, Lawler, always love your insight. Appreciate it, man. Given how fast pro players are now, how do they decide who goes for the balls that are in between two players in rotation? I'd assume there are lots of times where two players both can make a good play on the ball. So do teams have a hierarchy of which player should be the aggressor? Is it whoever calls it first, or do they have a feel for who it should be most of the times? That's actually kind of the order, or kind of the process. Usually it's communicated based upon intention, and based upon who calls for it is usually how it goes. Also, very rarely is there a time where two players both in the same position are going for it. And that's also what leads to a lot of double commits. But communication is always, like, I think the number one thing. If you've got a team that is playing really well, it usually means communication is on the point. It means that things are working the way that they should be. So communication to me is number one. Number two, with rotation and stuff, it usually comes down to a positioning thing. If I have this mentality of, if I'm here, this is what I can do, I should also be able to do that same thing with my teammate. I will say, though, that for some teams, there is a hierarchy. There is certain times when you play on a team where you always know, like, this player is going to take the solo play, or I'm going to be the one to kill them. Like, there's certain times that there definitely is. So there is really no one size fits all. It varies from team to team. There's a lot of times where there is certain players where you're like, yo, if we're on energy, like, Justin, just go for it, man. Like, if it's between you and me, you can have it. Do your thing. Not saying that's the case for energy, but there is some teams where that does apply. But most of the time, I would say it's communication. Communication usually dictates that. Next question comes from Zachary Klein. It says, loving the content recently. This is going to be the first ever LAN with tactical timeouts. How do you think LAN timeouts will impact matches compared to online tournaments? And how do you think they will change things compared to other LANs without timeouts? This LAN, I think, has a lot of things that are unique to it compared to any other LAN. Obviously, we've had a 2-year gap. That's kind of the biggest one. The fact that there is no crowd is another huge variance. The fact that there is a chance that if they can't play on stage, they may have to be separated and isolated to hotel rooms. That's a possibility. There's a lot of different variants and a lot of different variables that happen with this LAN. I can tell you that even when coaches got implemented for the first time in Season 8, we stopped seeing as many blowouts. We stopped seeing as many teams like being just completely destroyed. Unless it was a team that was significantly better than the other, like a high seed in NA versus a low seed in EU. You didn't really see like a 3-0 or a blowout. Like when Space Station was like musty flicking everybody and Arsenal was popping off. You didn't really see that when they went up against like Dignitas. But the nice thing about having that coach there, which can help with mental and keep people from like tilting out, is the series were close. Depends on the team. Energy has said this in interviews that usually they don't take their tactical timeout because they don't feel there's enough to like change up how things are going to go over the course of an additional 30 seconds. They focus more so on playing their game. But you could see if momentum is shifting in a certain way, you need to just take a little bit extra break to stop that momentum or catch your bearings a little bit. Then you could see it. So will it have that much more of an impact? I don't think so. I think the LAN side of things where they have the coaches there and that change that came in, I think was going to be very similar. But I don't know if we're going to see any like major crazy variance in that. And I don't know if you guys agree, chat. I don't know if you guys agree with the fact that tactical timeouts are enough to make or break a series, but I do think it'll allow things to remain close like they have in the past. So I think that stuff is pretty important. The next question comes from the professional bot that says, hey Lawler, I've been watching RLCS for a while now, and I've been wondering how they decide on who gets to cast what games. Do they pick it based on who performs the best, gets the most viewers, or is it just random? Love the content, man. Keep grinding. It is nothing like that. They don't pick the most popular. They don't pick... It varies a lot. I know for live events, they usually base it upon who's doing the best over the weekend sometimes. Like, there'll be times where RLCS is going on, there's like a 3 or 4 day event, and based upon how people are casting over the course of those days, if people are really hitting a stride, or, you know, they're kind of feeling it, similar to players, right? Like, there's certain times where you can take this team that's absolutely insane, but on LAN, they just have that off day. Sometimes casters have that as well. Sometimes casters just, the words aren't coming out correctly, you're stumbling over some stuff. Like, it happens to everybody. And usually you take that extra day to come back. But if you have a caster that's just like vibing that weekend, then yeah, he's probably going to get the grand finals. So it varies a lot. Sometimes they will ask us what games we want to cover. In the past for RLCS, they would be like, yo, is there certain teams that you really want to talk about? It's like, yes, I have a really good personal connection with players on this team. I would love to talk about insight on stuff like that. So it is a team effort. You know, the whole concept of it takes a village is very true. In order to take care of the baby that is RLCS broadcast, everybody has to put their best foot forward. Everybody has to work together to make sure that stuff is covered in some capacity. There's a lot of give and take. But at the end of the day, it's a team effort. Everybody is just trying to put on the best show possible. And that's a really weird mentality for some people when they first get into casting, is realizing, yes, you're not getting the biggest profile match, but your match is just as important. You need to understand that we as a collective are working to put on a show for the audience. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do about your own opinions. It has nothing to do with what you think you're owed. It is entirely about putting on a show for the betterment of everybody else. It is a true team effort. So understanding that is something that comes, but a lot of people don't understand that at times. So yeah, the full aspect of the show must go on. I still remember in season 2, it was season 2 LAN, and there was a situation with one of the casters where they were no longer able to cast. And rather than having like breaks and time off to kind of breathe, myself and Findable Carpet found ourselves, because we were the only 2 color commentators really, going and running around the entire outside of the arena so we could get backstage to color cast, and then we'd have to run all the way back around the other side upstairs so we could get back to the desk. Every other match, he and I just both cycled every other game, and we're sprinting the whole time because we were short 1 color commentator. And those are things you don't complain about. Those are things you don't have time. You immediately go into, okay, this is what needs to be done so the show can persist, and you just do it. It's part of the job. Nothing goes perfectly. I can tell you guys right now, the amount of fires that are being put out during a production at any given moment, and the casters are just there to fill time and stuff. I mean, shoot, season 7 in New Jersey, the South American players, one of them didn't bring an extra USB cable, and we filled for 35 minutes on the desk because he didn't have a different USB cable, so his controller kept disconnecting. That's why we had all those server issues, is because one player's controller kept disconnecting during the series. So we as commentators, after having already doing our pre-show and talking about everything, then had to fill for 35 additional minutes because we didn't have stuff to throw to. We didn't have B-roll. We didn't want to lose that initial bump of going into the match for viewership. It's how it goes. Some of the stuff you got to do. So back to the original point, who gets to cast what? It's a team effort. You kind of divvy it up based upon what's available, who wants to do what. Some people have their favorite teams that they want to cover. It varies. It varies a lot though. But at the end of the day, usually there is a talent manager or someone that determines the talent schedule of who casts what. Rolo, question about the hype chambers. I thought that when they announced it, this would also mean that they could display team decals even if the players didn't have them equipped. Has this already happened? Can we also hope for team stadiums, or was the idea of hype chamber more about outside stuff of the game? Yeah, so hype chamber is more about using Unreal Engine to showcase like team decals and stuff and cool fly-throughs and more of like the B-roll side of things. So like when you see them go into the match, it has the head-to-head graphic with the 2 cars on the rotating platform, and then it like zooms and it goes down a hallway, and then it does like a bird's eye view of the stadium and stuff. Things like that are what hype chamber are going to do. It allows for like augmented reality things. If you watched replay where we had like the F1 cars in studio and stuff, all that stuff is AR, which is done with Unreal Engine. In the future, you may see that, but the actual like adjusting player decals and stuff may come in time. but I think that'll be more of an API thing that's built in and having to do with a plugin, kind of like a Bacchus mod type thing that they build themselves. But I don't know if it's necessarily for that. Team stadiums, I don't know. I think orgs would have to pay a ton of money to have their stuff in game like that, which is a big opportunity. It's a good way for Psyonix to sell spots to teams, but most likely I think they'll hold off for that stuff for a while. Hey, Lawler, pretty interested on your thoughts here, but what team or teams do you think would benefit the most from the addition of Daniel? And kind of part two, what team do you think Daniel would fit best in? I think that's really difficult. Daniel is obviously a very heavily mechanical player, and luckily has built quite a bit of a rapport with a lot of the teams at the top. When deciding a new player, it's really tough because so many elements change to what I know the team's identity as soon as you plug in a new player. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that one, being honest, just because what Daniel goes to is going to be based upon who he scrims with and what scrims look the best with. I do think teams like V1 would really utilize him. You know, if you bring in Calm, Daniel, and like Torment, you're going to get a little bit more consistent offense, a little bit more less reliant on Calm. It would kind of have the same effect I think it would for like for Endpoint, where Endpoint brought in Seiko, and Seiko alleviated some of that pressure off of Relating Wave and Metzenars to play so strong on offense. But yeah, a lot of that stuff. Joking aside, you know, Danner says in chat, the worst team would benefit the most. Yeah, because Daniel's a phenomenal talent. It's going to be an upgrade, but ultimately, looking at all the teams who he's going to be a best fit for, I know a couple of the teams that he's really kind of keen in on, so I can't say too much, but just know he's going to end up where it's a couple of factors. One, the one that he feels most comfortable with, whether it be the players, the organization, whatever. The one that pays well is another factor probably. And when it comes down to it, based upon how scrims and stuff go, based upon how things are vibing, he's going to go with the one that feels the best when it comes to playing the game. It's really what it comes down to. Up next comes from Mark that says, question for next week. Can you talk about the process of becoming an insider in the pro scene? What does it take to get pros and other members of the pro scene be willing to divulge sensitive information about upcoming decisions? Also, where does a group like Shift even source their news from? Thanks for always the great content. Can't wait for your analysis in the major. Appreciate it, Mark. Yeah, so it's kind of two parts to that one. The first part is becoming an insider. That one I think is just having an involvement in the scene. You know, when you build a rapport with anybody, so think about it as like you meet a person for the first time. That person's not going to provide information that they wouldn't tell their close friends because you haven't built that rapport or that trust yet. And I've been lucky that in my career for the past 6 years, I've been able to build a rapport with some players, coaches, whatever, whether it be org owners or you name it, in the scene. And over time, that trust and that rapport has been built. Therefore, I'm allowed to be privy to information that others are not. Some of it is also players just wanting to talk about this new hot cool thing that's going to be happening. People like to share about their successes. So sometimes it's that. A lot of the time, though, that Shift gets their sources is there is certain Discord servers or otherwise where people talk pretty openly about the things going on. And sometimes those things are roster changes and otherwise. So sometimes it depends on who you know and what your relationships and networking are. But a lot of it is your networking abilities, who you know, who you talk to, who you've earned that trust with, and primarily who you haven't broken that trust with. You know, a lot of the reason I get told a lot of the stuff I do is because I don't leak the information. I hold on to it. I prep the video. I make sure it's good to go. So when the information is made public, I can talk about it. So it's more of like getting a heads up. And that's kind of the way that I've approached things, unless it's something extremely important, like getting whispers of Cloud9 potentially leaving the scene. Why is that? Let's deep dive into that. Let's do some homework about it. Let's talk and reach out to the people that I do know about why that may be happening. And then it leads into other conversations. So that's mostly it, but seriously, appreciate the support, Mark. Do you think NA will be able to adjust to EU passing and team play at LAN? Coming from Nathan. So if you're implying, so the way I read this in my mind is it almost comes off as like, yo, NA doesn't do team plays or pass. Like it almost, and this is not to discredit it, to think that NA can't make adjustments to pass plays and team plays. I don't think Europe, their pass plays or their team plays are any crazier than what North America is doing. They may become more frequent, and the possession game may be a little bit more frequent, but all these teams are world-class teams. I don't think we're going to see any crazy blowouts. I don't think we're going to see this one team be so unbelievably dominant compared to somebody else. You may have more close series than we've seen. I think the gap between NA and EU, if you want to even view it that way anymore, is, I think, kind of negligible. I think you're looking at teams in the way I've talked about it as individuals more. I'm looking at energy as a unit looking at Envy as a team. I'm looking at BDS as a team based upon their play style, based upon the things that they do, their mentality, their chemistry, communication. All those different factors determines whether I think this team will win or this team will win. And I try to back that up with history and stats and stuff if they are applicable. But do I think NA is going to be able to adjust? I don't know why NA wouldn't be able to adjust. If anything, I think NA probably will have some teams that do it better than some of the EU teams. But that's because it's a generalization. I don't think we should be viewing teams as NA and EU. I think we should view them as who they are for what they are, personally. So, again, it will be interesting to see how things play out. Alcatraz says, do you think we'll see the casters return to the desk? Yes. Or will we be stuck watching them with their webcams until live events? No. So for the major, we will see teams and certain casters in Sweden. There's going to be some guest appearances like Yummy Cheeseman, who will be there as a caster. Corelli cannot make it because I'm pretty sure he has a trip with his girlfriend that was already scheduled. But I actually respect him for that, putting family and relationship in front of work, which I think is really commendable, even though this is a really big deal. But a majority of the casters are going to be in Sweden because there's a lot of things that have to be covered. There's also some other cool projects that we might be doing coming up that I can't tell you guys about yet. When it comes to coming back to the studio, I don't think we'll see them going back to the studio anytime soon, just because in order for travel flights and costs and all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't make sense to. It's too risky. You've got guys flying internationally and stuff. Plus, you'd miss out on a lot of EU talent as well, which really sucks. So online is the way it's going to remain for a while. Ben Braun, hey Lawler, do you think for best of sets they should bring in a different set of casters per best of 7 series? No, I don't. I think when you're trying to create an atmosphere and a narrative, it's weird to have different storytellers telling that narrative from game to game. I just think it would feel weird. If you've got a casting style and they're building up this story that they're trying to evolve over the course of a match with a team, and then all of a sudden you switch the narration voice from like Morgan Freeman to like Gilbert Godfrey, it's a little jarring. I much rather have Morgan Freeman start to finish than mixing it up. You know what I mean? Also, this one from Fraser, we talked about this. He says, I don't think your comment saying recent lands have been NA dominated. We actually did the math on it, and NA has more teams, I think it was, in the top 4, less teams in the top 8 by 1 in both category. And then NA has more recent world championship wins than EU, but it like balances out. It's like super close. We went all the way back to like season 5. We did 5, 6, 7, and 8, and it's like stupid close. But I think it's more so, and I admitted to it, I think it was the recency bias that the last 3 world championships were NA won. All right, chat, I'm gonna give you guys last question for the video. We'll go through a couple of these really quick. Do you think players who have been to LAN with a crowd gonna get a cold shower moment on LAN so that it won't be as they remember it, or will they be just hyped with just their staff? I think it is going to feel weird for 2 reasons. 1, it's been 2 years, and 2, because again, there is no crowd. Some people really feed off of that, but I don't think we'll know how people are going to react to it until we actually see it. It's just so hard to fathom and articulate the feeling of walking into an event with people cheering and all that kind of stuff versus walking into an event where you still get international competition for the first time in 2 years, the ability to compete against other teams and all that kind of stuff. What it means, the major itself versus a world championship. Like, this is the first major we've ever had that counts towards the season. It's all been regional. So I don't know if there's any way to describe the feeling that it is, but I do assume that veterans will adjust to the uniqueness and the routine better than some of the rookies. How much of a difference that'll be, I don't know, because that's followed up by Brad, who says, with there being about 50-50 split of LAN veterans to rookies, which group would you pick to having the best LAN performance, if that makes sense? Feel to take it as like best performing players, teams, etc. I do think that some of the veterans are going to turn out pretty well. I think Energy, like, you just look at them as players and individuals, but then you also pair it with like LAN performances. Each of those players individually on LAN has always been clutch or stepped up and done really well. But I don't know if there's an answer to it, but the conversation around LAN, how it's going to feel, the differences, the different variables that are coming into this one specifically, which I'll talk about in a future video. Make sure you guys hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that. I don't know if there's an answer to it, but it's something that I'm thinking about. Well, chat, as well as YouTubers, all you frogs over there, that is going to do it for this week's Q&A video. We're at, what, 31 already? 31 Q&As. We've been doing this for almost a year. Jesus. Yeah, 31st Q&A video. That is a lot. It's crazy how fast time flies by. The fact that we're almost already into December is kind of scary. But that is going to do it for this video. If you guys do want to have your questions answered, 2 ways you can do it. As you guys have seen, come over to twitch.tv/Lawler, where I stream every day but Tuesday and Sunday. Come talk. Ask questions. That's what I'm here for. I will be answering the questions that we didn't put in the video to chat as well right after this. So if you guys want your questions answered, stop by. Or if you want it done on a more surefire way, comments down below. Let me know. Leave some questions. I'll get to them and we'll tackle them next week. But with that said, as always, if you guys do enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.